And we are live. Welcome to the Games Talk Live podcast. I am your host, Jay Fonz, and every week I have with me my co-host, Hargeet and I. Hargeet, how have you been, my friend?
I've been good. Well, it's another week, another fun stories and set of fun things. And last I heard that the PS5 Pro is going to replace all the AI processors and every data center. It's way more powerful than anything out there.
Sounds
I don't know
legit.
if you've heard.
Yeah. Sounds like that's going to happen. Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like it's going to happen. And we've got news tonight, a little bit on the PS6. That's right. There's going to be a PlayStation 6. King David, are you listening? There's going to be a PS6. Your knees will be taken. Anyways, he bit me, an addict, and some other people about there won't be a PS6. Anyways, it's all in good fun. Love David. But we are going to talk a little bit about Nintendo as well, the Switch 2. We've got some leaks. We've got some images to show. We've got some specs, some rumored specs anyway. And we're going to discuss that tonight because we have somebody down below with us who is very tech savvy. I've known him for many years now. We've talked, through DMs on Twitter and stuff. He's had a YouTube channel, Fasapo, F-S-A-P-O. Link is in the description, by the way. He doesn't really make videos anymore. He hasn't in years, but I wish he would because he's a very smart gentleman. Welcome, Jake. Thank you for being here tonight, man.
Yeah, no problem. I've been wanting to be on this podcast for years, but I just haven't really got around to asking, really. I should have.
Yeah, you should have, man, because especially there's been times where tech stuff comes up, and, I'll have D-Batch on, and D-Batch is great. Love D, but, it's good to get another side in the tech world of this. I have Hargeet. Hargeet's pretty tech savvy himself. He knows a lot about computers as well. I think where a lot of people fall short, at least D and maybe Hargeet, I don't know, Hargeet, how far when it comes to the software side of things. I don't know where you land on that.
Well, I mean, my schooling is in software. So
okay.
I have master's in programming. So
gotcha.
That's pretty cool.
That's really cool. Yeah. D is no slouch when it comes to tech. Tonight we're going to be talking about, first of all, I want to get to know the guest a little bit more, or at least you guys get to know him a bit more. Jake, what have you been playing as of late, and what do you normally play on? What platforms?
I am probably 95% of the time on PC. I also have a Switch for those higher profile Nintendo games, but honestly, I've been using my launch model Switch, which is jailbroken, to just rip my Switch cartridges, then emulate them on PC whenever possible.
Gotcha.
But for games that run okay, like run good and look good on the Switch, like Mario Kart, if you want to play online, you want to have the hardware. So, but yeah, 95% PC.
Nice,
lately,
nice.
There's just so many games lately. I've got a backlog right now. I still haven't finished the Ghost of Tsushima PC port. I finished it on PS5.
Oh, it's so good.
Years ago.
The Ghost of Tsushima port is great.
It's great. It's excellent. I need to finish Trails Through Daybreak. I'm working on that right now. The Persona 3 Reload expansion just came out. I still haven't finished Shin Megami Tensei 5. I've got probably 75% of the way through that.
Say that 5 times fast. I couldn't.
Yeah, it's just big old backlog right now. And not to mention Final Fantasy 16's PC port just came out. So, yeah, a lot of stuff to catch up on.
Nice. And pretty soon, hopefully, we'll get more of Square Enix's games day one on PC and Xbox, because they're tired of those exclusives, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, is that exclusivity thing going to be something we talk about today? Because I have some thoughts about that.
For sure. Oh, we can get into it right now. Let's talk about it. Square Enix exclusivity. Let's go, Jake.
So here's the way I feel about that. I fully see I see the purpose and appeal of first-party software and exclusives. I even as a PC gamer, I fully support that. I think it makes perfect sense. I don't think in this day and age with these ballooning game budgets that third-party exclusivity deals really make any sense anymore. It's usually what happens is the platform holder helps fund development of the game, or they they pay a certain amount of money to keep the game off other platforms for a certain amount of time. And the problem with that is you're not really investing in the future of the game if you do something like that. I'll give an example of several online games that released timed exclusive on Epic Games Store. Epic Games had a policy back in the day where they would pay you for lost sales that you would expect to get from Steam, but you're not allowed to release it on Steam. You get like exclusive on Epic for like a year or 6 months or whatever. That worked probably for some indie games that were single player, but like for multiplayer, for larger games, especially within a franchise, yeah, you make up that money that you would have gotten from Steam sales, but now you have fewer customers because of that, because of that exclusivity deal. And I think Square is probably starting to realize that. They've been, like, even in this day and age, they're still accepting exclusivity deals left and right from just about every platform. Like we saw Octopath, both, like at least the first one, I don't remember what happened with the second one. We saw Triangle Strategy that was on Nintendo. Obviously, we know about all the Final Fantasy games that were only on PlayStation. And they're probably getting paid money by Nintendo and Sony to, maybe it's helping fund development of the game, or maybe it's just, again, that money having to keep it off other platforms. But that's resulting in maybe the same amount of money up front, but in the long run, the game's going to suffer in terms of it's going to have lower user base, it's going to have less mind share, because unlike those major first-party games that can basically have unlimited marketing, and is tied with the identity of that, it's just not the case for most of these, not even Final Fantasy.
Yeah, no, it's true. You bring up a good point, because these budgets now are just getting astronomical, and to recoup the money that they put into these games and development is hard to do on just one platform. You have to have, a almost a system seller at this point with some of the budgets, and I can't see that really happening these days. So that makes a lot of sense. You have a lot of valid points there, Jake. Hargeet,
Final Fantasy is pretty niche compared to how it used to be. It's not a humongous, massive seller like it used to be. So it's not really a system seller.
It really isn't these days. And I know back in the day we used to talk about Final Fantasy as if it was. It's not that big game anymore, or franchise, I should say. Even though I still love a lot of the Final Fantasy games, I'm still looking forward to playing Rebirth. I have not played it yet. I've held off because I'm waiting for the PC version, to be honest.
Same.
And when that does come out, I'm going to definitely play it. But Hargeet, what say you on the matter, man, when it comes to these third-party games? Exclusivity.
So, look, I think that's kind of been... Look, a lot of games have been doing that over the last few years, and only a couple really kind of worked out. I think the one that, like, if it is an exclusivity deal, we're not really quite sure, but Black Myth Wukong, if that thing was really an exclusive, it worked for them because it didn't necessarily matter. They had so many sales on PC, and a lot of it from China, that it blew up on its own, right? And even with that, they still had a massive success if you even take that out of it, right? There's like 3-4 million non-Chinese on Steam, and then they sold 3.5, something like that, on PS5. So it's already a success. On top of that, they had a massive amount, like 10 plus million sales in China. So that's the one I could say that kind of worked. If you look at the other ones, it's kind of middling at best. Some didn't work. If you look at Square themselves, they say they were disappointed with Final Fantasy 16 and 7. They were disappointed, obviously, with Foam Stars. They closed the studio after Forspoken. That was the game, right? Forspoken.
Yeah.
Babylon's Fall was a massive fail. You can go on, right? The sales for, I believe, Octo 2 finally kind of made it after a while, but it wasn't really doing well up front. Even though it's only skipped like one platform. I just think it's better if they just decide to go all out, especially for Square. But I think they've done that, right? There was a leadership change, and the new head of Square is like, yeah, I'm almost out with this. I want it everywhere because, look, I'm just looking for value for my company, and it's not working to do these little exclusive deals here and there. It's just not. It's not helping us. So what they had in the past, they've had. I think they're going to, decide not to do that in the future. Other companies have been doing this here and there. They're dabbling. Rise of the Ronin with Koei, and I guess they're saying it did better than Neo, but then you look at their financials and we didn't meet targets. Okay, I'm going to take from that it didn't meet what you wanted, right? The sales weren't there. And again, the headache with an exclusivity deal with PlayStation is it excludes PC as well, which I think is just a stupid idea. There's just no reason. They're so vastly different, and the amount of players you have there is just so high. It's just we're talking about 1 billion potential players. Granted, not that many have Steam, but still 1 billion potential players versus what are we at, 60 million PlayStation 5s. You have to look at the economics of that and say, why am I doing this? Right? If it's like Microsoft, if they lock anything down, you're still fully able to go to Steam. You're still fully on their store. So you're on PC and you're on a console.
They put
right?
their
But
own
they're not
games on
taking it
Steam.
away from PC. Exactly, right? They're day and day. They want all games on PC, right? Which, it benefits them in a way because it's Windows. But the idea there is at least you have that massive install base to hit along with your console, right? Whereas this idea of locking it to, say, the Switch with Octo One. Okay, the Switch is really good. It had 100+ million at the time. Yeah, that's cool, but it is still one area versus you have everything else. And I think this model is okay if you're an indie, right, where you don't have budgets, you're just trying to struggle to get a game out the door. It's alluring enough to say, I take a bag and I can get my game out. Fair enough. I think that works. For smaller games, I think that works. But for bigger games, if you're at the single A, double A, triple A level, you have to start questioning, is it worth it? And if you're a big publisher, come on, it's just not a good idea. I think it's best to just leave it agnostic, right? Unless you're taking somebody's IP, right? If you're going to work on somebody else's game, right? So say somebody wants to work on a PlayStation specific owned IP, right, to do the game for them. Fair enough, right? Or an Xbox IP or something fine, right? That's fair. But outside of that, I don't know what the value is for a big publisher. They have the money, just use your own and then make the money from all the platforms.
Don't forget Lego Horizon's going to Switch.
Yeah, and that's a great one, right? Because they're seeing they being PlayStation is seeing the value of saying, hey, this is a family-friendly game. Let's put it out there, and that exposes them to our IP. Maybe that'll bring people over to that game series, right? And that's a good thing. And I expect that to continue, by the way. I expect there to be more Lego translations of their IP. So let's hope it does well. But yeah, that's the kind of thing that really should be happening. I also think, I think you were mentioning, Jake, the budgets, right? They're getting ridiculous. There's just no way around it, right? So if you want a 200 million plus budget, 300 million plus budget, you want to guarantee as many sales as possible. And I think you just kind of have to put it everywhere. At least as far as console and PC, if you can get it on mobile, right, in some fashion, whether that's cloud enabled, whatever, you want to do it. You want to attract as many customers to your game as possible. This is just something that they're going to have to contend with, or they have to cut budgets. That's just the way it is, right? Not all games seem to make it. So if you're going to try to make a very large budget game, just take Days Gone, right? That to me did reasonably well. That thing still sold 6, 8, 10 million copies, and nope, not
lifetime about 10, yeah.
Okay. So you just got to look at it and say, all right, well, if that was day and date PC, would it have made its money, right? Because as you said, lifetime, it made it to 10 million because PC, it actually got sold on PC for a bit there, and it bumped it up. They also put it on sale. If I recall, it did go into their service as well for a bit.
Do we ever get the numbers from Square Enix, like what they say on the Final Fantasy VII remake, the first one? Did we ever get
on that one? I don't know. On the second one, we haven't gotten official numbers. On the second one, we did get 16. I think was at maybe 3.5 to 4 million in that range.
I wonder if they have unrealistic expectations, especially when it comes to just being on one platform as well. Because it seems like it's the same song and dance every time. They always say it didn't meet expectations with every game they drop. That's what they say.
Yeah, so if you took 15 sold, I want to say around that much, 10 to 15 million copies, something like that. It sold pretty well, right? And if you expect that from a mainline Final Fantasy game, they're like, okay, well, that's our expectation for 16. That's not an like an unexpected thing, right? You would just expect it would kind of continue, but it did not because it was on one platform. Now, it's also on one platform that was just about growing into its large install base. It was PS5 only, not PS4, and they might have had like 30-40 million in that at that time, something like that. So you're not going to expect to get a massive attach rate. I think what they got was about 10%, which to me on a third party game, that's a lot. Outside of Call of Duty, that's a really big deal. I don't see why 10% is bad, but I mean, I think they wanted 15 to 20% attach, and I'm like, dude, how are you going to get that? That's like very unheard of. Only a few games have ever done that kind of thing. Hogwarts might be one of them, right? It's very hard to do that. And like, you're expecting this ridiculous amount. Now, if they had 100 million of them, 10% would be a very good amount, right? But they don't. And you just have to deal with that, right? They decided that they're going to lock
most of the
themselves
market is casuals who buy COD and FIFA every year and maybe buy something like Hogwarts. That's most of the market.
Exactly. Yeah. And so this is why those kind of exclusivity things are just, it's killing them, right? If they got like an extra 1 million on Xbox, they got an extra 4 or something like that on PC, they'd be in good shape, right? That would be good for them. So I think they've kind of learned that lesson. I don't know if these would fit on the current Switch, but they will probably fit on the new one. We'll talk about that later. But so they really just need to say, no, we're putting this stuff everywhere. There's just no point in locking it down.
And it seems like it seems like that's what's going to happen. Let's go ahead and move forward and let's talk about that Nintendo Switch, by the way. Some Nintendo
we got some
Switch
good segues today.
Yeah, Nintendo Switch 2 has been leaked, apparently. Supposedly, images and information that have come out could be real. And if they are, we have a lot to talk about here because for me anyway, surprisingly, this thing seems to be more capable than I thought it would be if these specs are to be true. And let's go through some of that now. First of all, let's go through some of these. Okay, I have, let me do this real quick. There you are. Okay, so here we have the alleged specs. It's a handheld here that it's above the PS4, apparently, before DLSS. And I know a lot of people are probably like, PS4, but anyways, that's not bad for a handheld. And it's between the PS4 and Xbox Series X docked, apparently. So, and this is before DLSS. The RAM is slower than the PS5 and Xbox Series X and S in the speed department, it says. But more capacity than the Xbox Series S. Should have about 10.5 to 11 gigabytes of RAM available to the games. And then one of the RAM is going to be allotted for the OS. Now, I heard that another place that it was going to be 12 gigabytes. So I don't know. This is close.
Yeah, that's what they're saying. It's going to be 12. We don't know how much of it will be. Okay. One will be taken for the OS, but it might be more. We'll see, right? Because they might do more on the online side. We'll have to see, right? But assume it's around that, 1 to 1.5, and that's pretty normal for consoles.
Yeah, and then we have the storage, UFS. What does UFS stand for? I'm not sure, guys. I'm not sure what UFS is here.
These are
one of the formats for
essentially these are the same NVMe SSDs that are in, kind of in the Xbox and are in the PS5.
Oh, okay.
Essentially, very similar.
No, I think it's just flash, right? I think that's what it's supposed to be.
It's like a flash.
That's really fast for flash, though.
That's really fast. 3.1 max speeds should be a hair under the Xbox Series X and S.
Is UFS 3 that much? Though maybe it is just that much, right? UFS 3.1.
I thought UFS 3.1 was like 500 megabytes per second. And the only reason I kind of know that is because I was looking. I have a ROG Ally. I don't have it with me, but that supports UFS 3, I think, and I was looking for SD cards for that, and they're just at least they were expensive when that thing launched. So,
and the Switch 2 is going to be ARM based rather than x86, like
Switch.
Yeah, just like the Switch. It's also NVIDIA versus AMD, so they will be using DLSS here. Yeah, so what do you guys think about that so far, the specs? And while we talk about it, I'll throw up the images that were leaked. This is supposedly the Switch 2. And I think it looks a lot nicer, sleek. and a larger screen is always good. 8-inch screen here, apparently. What do you guys think about it?
You first, Hargeet?
Yeah, sure. If you want, I mean, I'm already excited anyways because I like Nintendo games, right? So I'm going to get one anyway. And just like you guys said, I use it for their exclusives, but their exclusives are fantastic, right? So I've done one time what you did. I didn't play Zelda. I bought it. I have it digitally on the Switch. Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. I played that emulated, but on the PC just to get the 60 frames. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, I just play on the Switch. It's great. I think the thing that's going to be very interesting is NVIDIA trying to show off that, hey, you know what, we can do this console thing, and we've got DLSS, and they're going to bake that in. So you're going to get some pretty impressive capabilities with this thing. Just like what AMD is introducing FSR4, and their specific thing is portables, right? So, and we'll talk about that later, but the ability for this to do DLSS, upscale, and give you something at a reasonable resolution. And when we're thinking of that PS4, think about that, but with DLSS. Understand that you're not going to get something. And remember, you're on a small screen. You don't need to have 4K.
And when it's
not necessary.
And then when it's docked, apparently it's almost a Series S,
which will give you straight line
DLSS.
1080.
Yeah.
Right, 1080 with DLSS upscaling. Like, this is the stuff, and it's going to be a pretty impressive device. I generally tend to see the Series S as really good at, people are just look at stats and don't look at the picture. And if you're just playing the game in general, it's pretty good, and it's pretty similar to what you get with the X or the PS5. It's just if you start looking at it in detail, you're like, okay, that's more res. Okay, that one's cleaner over there. And there's a bit more foliage and stuff like that. Yeah, okay, but for the most part, very playable. So this just makes it very clear this is going to compete now. It's going to have most of those third-party games because there's no reason to skip it, right? You will be able to port your game, right? And if you can do that, then why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you put it there? If Nintendo ends up with another 50, 60, 80, 100 million consoles, I just can't see third-party publishers saying, we're just going to skip that console. No, they will put their games there.
Yeah, especially when look, I was just talking to Colt. Shout out to Colt Eastwood, by the way, today, regarding this generation so far. And Jake, I'm going to bring you into this conversation as well, because this generation, for me anyway, hasn't really been a generation where I've been wowed by any game so far. And it seems like a lot of the games that come out are just last gen games, kind of, up-resed and ray traced and freaking, frame gen, and we're getting better products, but it seems very incrementally. It's not a huge jump like we saw from even going, I said this last week, from the 1X to the from the Xbox One to the 1X. I thought that was a bigger leap because we were going from 900p to 4K, which was mind blowing at the time. We were like, oh my God,
I definitely want to talk about this.
Yeah.
I definitely want to talk about this.
And so it's like, and then today I was shocked that while I was talking to Colt, I'm looking up some gaming topics to talk about. And what do I see? I see this video come on, and it's showing me Jedi Survivor on the PS4 and Xbox One. And I'm thinking to myself, I thought that game was billed as a next-gen game. But no, it had just come out for Xbox One and PS4 just 2 days ago. And it blew me away. And I said, wait a minute. So the only thing next-gen about these games is ray tracing, because that's what was holding it back from going on those consoles, was the ray tracing. They took
Remember
that away.
Godfall was supposed to be using the PS5 SSD to its full extent. Remember that?
The magical SSD. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, what do you say, Jake? I mean, I'll start with you.
Just one little thing. I did look it up. It's 2.1. 2.1 for the UFS 3.1. It's 2.1 gigabytes per second.
Okay.
So I don't know if that was they were saying whatever.
That's what they were saying. 2.1. Yeah.
Yeah. So 2.1 gigabytes per second.
2.1. Okay. So it was That's still pretty fast. That's good.
I mean, it's 2.4 guarantee on the Xbox.
Yeah,
so it's
good.
right there. It's right there.
It's good. But yeah. So if you're telling me that these games can go on a PS4 and an Xbox One, why can't they go on this new Switch too? That's
Yeah,
the way I see it.
I kind of want to break down. I have the spec sheet in front of me, or at least the leak
Go
stuff
ahead.
here, and it lines up with a lot of the stuff we've been seeing be leaked out. I mean, Dr. Trey 81 has done a pretty good job of digging up stuff from LinkedIn and other projects, and I don't remember if it was him or somebody like related to him that had found the T239 leak. So we kind of knew kind of what the Switch 2 specs were going to be like. All the stuff in here looks pretty plausible. We didn't know about the RAM allocation. We were wondering, like, are they just going to double it to 8 gigs, which that would have been really stupid. But were they going to just double it to 8 gigs? Were they going to give us 16? Were they just going to do 12? A lot of us settled on 12. That's kind of what it looks like here. I'm not going to go into technobabble about like which ARM cores are in that or the GPU, the stream processors, or any of that stuff. I'm not going to do any of that.
Yeah.
But if I were to take a wild guess, it's really hard to guess with Nintendo because we don't know what wattages they're going to be running this T239 SoC at, which is for the people that don't know, that's where the graphics and the processor cores are. We don't know what wattage they're going to run that at because they severely underclocked the Tegra X1 that's in the Switch. They made good use out of it, but that was running at like, even in dock mode, like half of that thing's normal clock speed.
Really?
But if we go by, kind of what we should expect from this and maybe take some downclocking into account, I'm thinking that in handheld mode, this thing is probably going to have processor capability. This isn't going to sound too good, but probably around the level of PS4, Xbox One, maybe more Xbox One X. And the graphics, at least in handheld mode, I think is going to be probably better than Steam Deck, actually, because the graphics die in this is a lot bigger than the graphics die that's in the Steam Deck. Now, again, we don't know what node this is on. This could be, we think it's Samsung 8 nanometer, which is a worse node than what the Steam Deck's 7 and then 6 nanometer chip was built on. So that could partly have to do with the size, but it's bigger. It's a bigger GPU, but with DLSS and more advanced ray tracing, smaller CPU cores. So at least in handheld, I'm guessing processing around PS4, Xbox One, graphics better than Steam Deck, although I don't know to what extent. Docked mode is where it's going to get tricky to guess. I mean, you can just look at the thing here. It's definitely bigger than the original Switch. There's a couple of pictures where they kind of compared a rendering of the original Switch model with this. It's clearly bigger. So it's going to have a little more thermal capacity. We saw in the spec sheet that it's going to have dual fans. So the original Switch only needed one fan because even the original model barely put out any heat. So clearly they're going to be pushing some more wattage through this thing, at least in docked mode, than they did with Switch 1. And that's kind of where the question comes in of like, how powerful is this actually going to be? I think that the important thing to mention when we're talking about the PS4, like it's going to be like a PS4 with ray tracing. It's important to remember that this is going to be running on a much, much more modern graphics architecture than what the PS4 had. It's going to have way more IO throughput. And like we were told that people, I forget what event it was, Gamescom or something, where like developers were taken into a room and were shown the Matrix Awakening demo running in some capacity on Switch 2, either Target hardware or Switch 2 hardware. It's important to remember with Switch 1, that thing launched off the heels of the Wii U, which was a failure. So third-party developers didn't really, and even Nintendo didn't really know if the thing was actually going to succeed or not. So eventually developers got on board, but like early on, there weren't that many developers putting games on Switch 1 because they just didn't know if it was worth the investment. What if it was just going to be another Wii U? And I think the 12 gig VRAM allocation actually, or RAM, I should say, actually, it should be good for this. One of the major like drawbacks of the Series S is not the CPU, because that's basically the same as the Series X. It's not the SSD speed or the IO throughput, because that's the same as the Series X. It's the fact that it has 10 gigabytes of RAM that's segmented, and a lot of developers are feeling RAM constrained, and that's what's making it hard to scale stuff to Series S, at least sometimes when it does happen.
Yeah, true.
Because like you can scale back graphics no problem. Even like we saw Jedi Survivor getting put on PS4, so like you can scale back graphics no problem, and processing, like I said, it's the same. So it's really that memory allocation. So if they can put a little more RAM in this and give more available to the developers, maybe don't segment it, it should help quite a bit. And as for that RAM, it is slower than what's in like Xbox Series S, for example, but it's LPDDR5X, 7,500 mega transfers per second speed. That's about the same as the ROG Ally X handheld PC. In fact, I think it's exactly the same speed. It's pretty decent, I'd say. I mean, the ROG Ally X is one of the most powerful handheld Windows PCs on the market today, so that's pretty decent.
Yeah, no, it does seem decent, and that's why it kind of surprised me. But thank you for that, breaking it down. That was really good. When it comes to this generation, though, like I was saying, you said you wanted to jump in on that conversation as well. Like, how do you feel about this generation? Like, has there been any game that has come out this gen that's made you go, wow, now this is next gen?
I remember there are two games, and ironically with the same word in the title, even though they're both cross-gen, they had like current gen. And when I refresh the YouTube page of the stream, it just keeps replaying the very end of me speaking, and then it stops. Yeah. So it makes me think this, but it says it's live.
Yeah.
Are we still live?
Are we live? Are we back? I think we're back.
Let's go in and check. I remember where I left off.
Anyone hear me?
Yeah, it just keeps looping.
Yeah, I think we're back.
We had, I
think we're back. I
see the chat. They're saying we're back.
We're back. All right. I'm sorry for that, chat. I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was YouTube or not, but my internet is going strong, and we were just cutting in and out, and video feed was bad, and it was just not good. Not good. But we're back, I think. Okay. All right.
So we left off on like, was there any game this generation that like?
Yeah. And you were talking about. And
I said even though they're cross-gen, I said Forza Horizon 5 and Horizon Forbidden West were the first games that came out and like really showed the difference. Kind of showed the difference of what this hardware could do that the old stuff couldn't do. Because the previous gen versions of those games still looked pretty good, but there was a very, very large difference when you put those on like either an Xbox Series X for Forza or PS5 for Horizon Forbidden West.
Gotcha. Yeah. Horizon Forbidden West looks great and everything, but it doesn't do anything new or innovative to me that make me really stand up and say, that is next gen. I don't know. It just,
Horizon Forbidden West was also a PS4 game. So
yeah. Oh, it is.
Just like Horizon 5 was also an Xbox One game.
Yeah.
like the PS5 version of Horizon Forbidden West had extremely high close-up detail. Like it used, again, I don't know if it was mesh shaders or not, but that was really like the major thing was the.
I don't think they have been using mesh, have they?
It's either mesh shaders or it's something like it. That like I don't think PS5 has mesh shader support, but they do something that's similar to it. That gives
they do. It's just
detail.
not as hardware baked, but it is there. You can use it. It hasn't been. What was that? Callisto. I think it was Callisto that did it. It was one of those games that did it, and then it was so bad that they decided to undo it. I don't know if it was Callisto or Dead Space. Maybe it was Dead Space remake.
Oh, I think I think they had a variable rate shading.
No. They had mesh. And then they undid it because it was so bad on the PS5 versus the Xbox that they just said, all right, well, we're just going to undo that and then do normal. And it worked way better on the PS5. They also undid it on the Xbox side. So
I guess just when I think of next gen.
Let me just look that up. I'm pretty sure that was Dead Space.
When I think of next gen, I think of, games that are doing something that couldn't be done on last gen hardware. And I understand some of the graphic fidelity can't be as pushed on last gen. And it's, vastly superior. But it's still not like the jump that I saw from the 900p games we were getting with the base Xbox One to the One X. It was a big jump. So it kind of spoiled this generation for me. It honestly did. And
we are starting to see diminishing returns to an extent, and there's a reason for that.
Yeah. But we're seeing at the same point, we're seeing diminishing returns on some of the graphic fidelity, but then we're also seeing them push other tech like lighting and ray tracing and things like that that is really resource heavy on these machines. And it's like that's where it comes down to. Like, I put out a post because I was like, I feel like the frame gen, DLSS, FSR, all these tech, they're great pieces of tech. They're great things to use in these games and push tech forward. But at the same time, are developers relying too heavily on those things? I don't know if we're like, the demand in these games is going well past the hardware. Can the hardware not do it? Like,
I think on a lot of console games, yes, they are relying too heavily on that. And the very easy way to spot that is to see those games that, FSR 2 and 3 is perfectly reasonable when you're like your target resolution is 4K and you're upscaling from even 1080p is fine, but quality mode 1440p to 4K looks totally fine. But there's a lot of these console games that in order to push all the ray tracing effects, we saw this in Avatar and in Star Wars Outlaws, for example, same engine. They have to render at like 720p and try to reconstruct that up to 4K. And if you ask me, that right there is relying too heavily on something in a way it's just not meant to be used.
Yeah, and we're even seeing with the PS5 Pro, they're still using like 864p and then using their PSSR to really push it up to 4K. And
I'm okay with that if the end result looks good.
Yeah, true.
With PSSR, like it's in the examples they've shown so far, it definitely looks a lot better than the temporal upscaling that we were using beforehand. So if the end result is okay, I'm fine with it. But I do think that maybe looking at it holistically, if you have a game that needs to render at like 720p just to run on these things, and you're still getting unstable performance, like you can't hold 60, yeah, I think you might be expecting a little too much out of these boxes.
You know what upsets me more? It's more so than DLSS or FSR or PSSR. It's the frame gen for me. It's the use of frame gen in some games. Some games it looks lousy. There's certain things, and in every game I can point out, oh yeah, if you use frame gen, there's always some anomaly within the graphics that I'm like, I don't like that. What it does to hair, what it does to edges sometimes on certain, when you're in motion and you look at certain edges and stuff, it looks all weird. And I end up turning frame gen off. I don't like using it. And I feel like some of these games that push frame gen, case in point, Wukong on the PS5. They used frame gen
to hit 60.
To hit 60 from like 35 frames. And of course when it does go up there, you're going to have latency. It introduces latency when you use frame gen. That's just something that comes along with it. So I don't know. I'm just not big on that stuff. But I get it. If you need to use DLSS to get it to 4K or whatever it is, and it looks good, that makes sense. But the frame gen for me is still not there. I can spot it in just about every game. I can spot when frame gen's being used, and it's not pretty. It's not pretty.
I've noticed in DLSS 3 frame gen that usually garbles the UI. FSR 3 for some reason never has this problem. I guess AMD's figured that out. NVIDIA hasn't yet, but FSR 3 has still, even with 3.1, has some frame time oddities, and it can't reliably generate frames as low of a frame rate as DLSS 3 can. So yeah. They both got flaws for sure.
What were you going to say, Hargeet?
What was I going to say? No,
sorry about that.
That's all right.
No, we were talking about frame gen.
Yes. No, it wasn't frame gen.
Okay.
One game that does remind me or kind of feels like it was next gen, and if I remember the name of it, but it was the one where you're a police cam view and you're walking.
I think it's just called body cam.
Maybe that is the game.
Body
yeah,
cam,
and it's the one where you're walking through a sort of empty house, sort of whatever, but there's enemies in there, whatever. And you're right, that looked like it was just real, right? Yeah, that looked real. Now I think that was on PC. I don't think it was on console. But that would be something that maybe would look sort of next gen. But I think the problem is like you said, Fonz, we kind of got the 4K bump already. And then you basically are at particle effects, ray tracing, and path tracing that could potentially make it look more realistic, right? And you're going to need a lot of grunt to get to path tracing. and we're not quite there on the console side.
We're barely there on PC.
Yeah, we're a 4080 higher. You can do it on PC, but it's like it looks good, fine. But I think even that could use some refinement. And once that gets to a certain level, it's gonna look like that. Like you'll have games like that. What was the name of it again? The police cam one, body cam.
Body cam.
That you'll have a lot more of those kind of things. The question is, do you want games to look like that?
In some cases, yes. Like Flight Simulator, for example, like that part of the experience. That's one game I can think of where having realistic visuals directly affects the gameplay and experience, because you're trying to simulate flying through the real world. So something like that, I think it would work.
Is an incredible game on its own.
Dude, I'm so excited for Flight Sim 2024. That is my number one most anticipated game. Period. This upcoming till the end of the year.
Yeah, and it's coming like a couple of months, right? November.
I'm so excited.
So, yeah. But I think that, like, to me, the next thing that I want to see is really just making the game more interactive, right? So if they can use AI to make it different, right? So every playthrough is different. Everybody's playthrough is different, right? That would be kind of cool, right? If I choose to do something stupid to somebody that it eventually haunts me like 10 hours later, right? That guy comes back, or
well, Hargeet, have you saw
that'd be hilarious.
have you saw those demos where people implement AI into some RPGs, and they actually have a microphone hooked up and they talk to NPCs? They actually talk to NPCs, and they could say to an NPC at a bar, say, "Hey, you see that guy over there in the green shirt?" And the NPC will actually turn and look and talk about that guy in the green shirt. And it's like, this is the kind of stuff that would be so cool in the future in our games, to where it's totally interactive in that way.
I actually think that because technology advancements are slowing down and we're seeing diminishing returns, I think that the PS6 and whatever the next biggest technological leap ever Xbox is going to be less about a massive like hardware increase and graphical fidelity increase. I think they're going to slap big old NPUs in those things, and I think that more interactivity is going to be kind of a key staple. Like that's what you just described, essentially, not just talking like, look at that guy with the green shirt, but just more interactivity in that way in general, I think is going to be here's what you can do on the next Xbox or the PS6 that you could do it on PS5 or maybe even PS5 Pro, but like, you talk to a character or whatever, and they're going to stand there and go, and that's your console processing what they're supposed to be saying. Whereas on like the PS6 and next Xbox, it can just be instant. I think that's the kind of stuff we're going to see, less so graphical fidelity increases. We're going to see those, but it's not, I don't think it's going to be as big of a jump as it was going from PS4.
I think Hargeet's 100% right. We're at that point where we're already seeing amazing graphics, and so what comes after that? Maybe better animations, better freaking particle effects, things like that, more detail, maybe strung throughout the worlds. But as a whole, when you just visualize the graphics, they're not like a huge leap right now. And I don't know, man. Like, it's getting to the point where I'm good with how everything looks right now. I love how the graphics look. Just take even Red Dead 2 still looks unbelievable to me on my PC. Just I'll take that. Give me better animations, better gameplay mechanics, and innovate there. I'd be great with that. I don't know. That's just the way I feel about it.
I think that the PS5 and Xbox Series consoles, like, they were stuck, like Sony and Microsoft were kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place when those launched, because like PS4 and Xbox One were getting long in the tooth and were seriously falling behind the industry, what PC was at. So they needed new consoles out, and not to mention they had already put the R&D in for them, but they kind of launched before ray tracing was cheap and available to the mass market, and before AI it became kind of bigger. Like interactive AI, we're not even there yet. So those consoles launched and gave us a visual fidelity increase and IO throughput, but it's just not they just didn't launch at a time where they could like really get there to where they should have been to be like a game-changing experience, I guess, if I'm wording that correctly.
Yeah, I see that.
I think if you went from a base PS4, a base Xbox One to a Series X or PS5, I think you had a better experience, right? Because it's a substantial
100%.
And one of the things we forget about, because we're used to it now, is just the load times. Man, the ability to not have to deal with freaking minutes of load times. It's so like it's just like we just accept and expect it, right? That's just the way it is. This isn't going to take like 3 minutes to load my next level. But that was normal. You'd sit there.
I remember
wait,
when I put
wait,
my first
wait.
SSD in my PC,
Oh my
and like those weren't even optimized for SSDs back then. But going from like a 2-minute load to a 15-second load was like,
I know, right?
Oh, do
And now
you
you're like,
remember?
oh my goodness.
I
Why is
still
this order right?
I vividly remember playing Morrowind on the OG Xbox, and those freaking load times were insane.
Oh yeah,
but loved it.
yep.
Loved it. Even when you went inside any kind of building, the door would close and it'd be a black screen forever, and then it would open back up and you'd be inside.
Classic Bethesda.
Loved it though, man. That was my favorite experience on the OG Xbox back in the day. Loved.
And there are minor
console.
other things here and there, like quick resume, which is really cool. I mean, if you use it, it's so nice to just be able to switch. I mean, it's one of the things that I don't like that's not on PC. It's like, come on, bring that over. Quick resume is just such a cool feature.
Yeah. Somebody said it'd be great if you fix your stream. Is it still buffering? Because I've had it up and I'm not seeing it buffer on my end. Like I've been having a second screen with it on, and it hasn't loaded yet or buffered for me. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, I'm watching the stream right now, and it looks clear to me.
Yeah, I don't know.
It makes me think maybe YouTube's having a problem.
I think it's YouTube, because I normally don't have a problem with that. It's really weird. Sorry about that, guys. I apologize if you guys are having problems. That still sucks. Let's go ahead and move on. Let's talk about Marathon. Another future failure for Sony or a big hit for Bungie? And I worded that way because, well, apparently Sony is kicking around the idea that they should sell this game for $40, which sounds kind of familiar, right? Another game in a genre that's oversaturated, and they are free to play games that are oversaturating those genres, by the way. And I say genres because I don't know what this game is. Some say extraction shooter. Others are saying that they changed their mind. They went to hero shooter, and I don't know what it is this week.
If it's a hero shooter, it's going to flop. Guaranteed.
But here's the thing. If it's an extraction shooter,
changed it now to a class-based shooter, right? So
what is it?
That's what we're hearing.
Okay, so
we don't know yet.
If they do come out at $40 with this, that is not a good sign. That is not a good sign.
Well, look, this is where Sony hurts Bungie, right? Because Bungie would not do that. But there's a reason why PlayStation wants one of these live games that has a pay-to-play structure. Why? Because it requires PS Plus, and that requires people to subscribe to PS Plus. And
I didn't even think about
that. If they don't have a game like that, and look, and I say this even though I don't think it's ever going to happen, but you never know. Call of Duty was bought by their competitor. Now, as long as Phil is there, I'm sure he will never do those what he calls shady or slimy console practices, right? He will probably just leave it alone and you get everything and it'll be fine. But Phil will not always be running Xbox. And after 10 years, they pretty much can do whatever they want. They may still put the game there, but they might gimp it. That's always a possibility. And if that happens, yes, it would hurt them. There's no way around that. And they got to be careful about that. And they've got to think about the future and what are they going to do, right?
Well, PlayStation's still getting Call of Duty, but you know what they're not getting? The exclusive marketing and beta timing and stuff. They're not getting that anymore.
Exactly. That's gone. That's gone, right? And but either way, let's say nobody switches, which even the regulators, everybody like, yeah, it's going to happen. And Microsoft relented and said, yes, a small percent will switch. Yes, there will be some people shifting over from PlayStation to Xbox because they own it. They own the game that most people will go buy a freaking system for. They own it. So what will that do if they don't have a replacement? That's why they wanted Destiny, but Destiny's failing. That's why they want the next one because, well, they need something to replace it. And that's the big problem. And that's why Concord didn't launch free to play. which it bloody well should have. There was no reason to do that. They hampered that game. There was no reason to do that. You knew that wasn't going to work, but they did it anyway, and they're going to do it to Marathon. And you're like,
I think your point of them wanting a pay-to-play multiplayer game to require PS Plus, I never even thought about that. Like that's got to be the reason.
Well, you know, DC Gaming in the chat has a question. Basically, he's like, well, he has a statement, then a question here. He's like, gaming is really cooked. You come out at full price with a battle pass, people will complain. Of course they will. It's full price with a battle pass. Like, no. But and then he says, you come out as a free-to-play game, people complain. No, not necessarily. If it's a bad game, yes, of course they'll complain. If it's a good game at free-to-play, and even if it has microtransactions, people are normally fine with that. It just depends on if it's good or not. And then he's like, you come out at $40 in the middle, and people still complain because it's $40 in a sea of games in a genre that is like free to play. Like there's so many free to play games out there that you can play rather than play, you know, just the run of the mill Concord, let's say, you know, that's why Concord fell. It wasn't doing anything special. It was in a genre that was oversaturated, that had a bunch of free to play games out there in the same genre that were better, that were even better. Like you can pick certain things and say, well, this was better about Concord than those games or whatever, but it was still a $40 entrance fee for that game. A lot of people weren't going to pay that. So I don't know. That's how I feel about it. What do you guys feel about that?
That actually makes me wonder how Deadlock is going to do, which is that game Valve is making. Can't talk about that too much. I did play a bit of it.
I was invited to that. I was invited to that pretty early on. My brother got into it, and he had sent me.
Can't talk about it too much.
And I played a little bit of it, and I will say it's got some unique features to it. There's some things that are unique about it, but in other ways, it's a lot like what we've been playing and seeing out there.
Valve is usually really good at designing games that people actually want to play. They don't always hit, but Valve is usually pretty good. So they might be able to figure it out. But again, pretty sure, I don't know if they confirm this or not, but I'm pretty sure that's going to be free to play. Because I mean, it works for them with Counter-Strike and Team Fortress.
Well, so, how do you think that your friends are enjoying it? Because
I mean, again, people are not really talking about it too much because there's that whole NDA thing. So I don't think people are really sharing their opinions too much. I'm not going to share mine until we know for a fact that it's safe to do so.
But did you agree, or did you tab out of the agreement? Did you agree to it though? Did you?
I did agree, but like I didn't want to think outside the box of tabbing out.
Yeah,
but that whole thing, like like everyone's got to have that big live service, and I could see why Sony wants to chase that. Microsoft, by the way, let's not forget, like Microsoft wants to chase that too. They tried with Halo Infinite.
Everybody does.
So,
and Sony did have a good one with Helldivers too. I mean, they sold that for $40. It sold well, but that's because the game itself looked interesting and was compelling to a lot of people out there that wanted something like Helldivers. That. Yeah.
Exactly. It was a sequel to a game people knew. And they're like, okay, this is going to be more of that. Cool. It sounds cool. Let's give it a chance.
Which is why, like, it's just nuts to me.
And it just virally went up.
It's just nuts to me that they didn't finish Factions, or at least have another developer do that. Because, like, I think that
they finished ridiculous it. Apparently, they finished it. They just didn't want to release it. And I'm like,
because they didn't want to maintain it.
Who cares?
They should have had us. They should have had us like another studio handle at least maintaining that, because that right there. If they had executed that properly, I think Factions 2 or whatever they wanted to call it would have been their game.
And look, Marathon may also benefit from the fact that it's Bungie, right? There are Bungie fans out there, and hopefully people will give it a chance. So we don't know. It may be okay. We just have to wait and see, right? So if it seems compelling enough, if streamers decide they like it and they'll stream it, you never know. It might pick up, right? So we're not at the point of saying it's going to fail. It's just out the gate, you're just giving it a unfortunate headache to deal with, right? So it would have been easier if it's just available. People can just download it and try it.
Yeah, so I'm in a weird spot with Sony, because like it's so weird because Sony's not like Nvidia. Like Nvidia can basically always execute properly and on time, and like even when there's problems, they usually are able to work things out. Sony can be really good at executing, but not necessarily with live service. So it's so hard to predict. Like they have the capability of really nailing it, but I don't know. They just don't have a good track record with online games, at least the past couple generations.
Yeah, they don't.
I don't think I don't think any of the console. Well, actually, Nintendo. I will say Nintendo's been fine, but Nintendo's going to Nintendo. They have their games and their crowd.
The way I kind of look at it with games is kind of the way I look at the internet as a whole. Like if we remember in the 90s and the 2000s, the internet was mostly like you had your search engine, and then everyone had their own website. Like you'd go to the this person's website to watch their videos, and then you'd go to this person's site to read their blog. And then in the 2010s, everything kind of became homogenized. Now everyone's on Twitter, Reddit, Facebook, YouTube, or any of the big websites. I think with these multiplayer games, you might see small things pop up. Like you'll still see people host their own websites, for example. But I think with the games, it's gonna be hard to, it's gonna be hard to have your new online game succeed when the Fortnite and Roblox and those games are out there, and they're gonna kind of suck away the attention of most people. And they have stuff where people can like create their own things. So I think that online games are going to become like how the internet did, and it's going to become homogenized into just a few big multiplayer games, and we're already starting to see that.
Yeah, I mean the Call of Duty still do well, but again, that's one of the big ones. You've got your Fortnites. I mean, Apex is still doing okay, I guess. That goes up and down though. Valorant. That's another one.
Which just came to consoles, right? So
yeah, it did. Yeah, consoles.
I haven't heard too much rumbling about that. I don't know if console players are playing that or not.
Actually, I don't know. Let me ask my son. Matt, you been playing Valorant on console?
Yeah, I did when it released.
Yeah, he played a little bit with his friends when it released. He says it's pretty good on console. He plays it mostly on PC and stuff, but he plays it a lot on PC. So. No problems there with the console version. Let's move on though. Let's talk about. I thought this one was amusing. Basically, we saw that Sony is remastering yet another game. This time, Horizon Zero Dawn, which I personally don't understand why they're going to remaster this game. It's not that old. It still holds up. Still looks incredible. Why are we doing this? Hargeet, why are they remastering this game? Could it be because there's nothing else coming to the... No, here's my theory. I think that the PS5 Pro needs games, and this is one of them that's going to come out maybe this holiday even.
Really? We're going to... So this is what bugs me, right?
Know.
Normally, if you're making a console, I agree with you. I think that actually is one of the key reasons, but they have a new console, right? Normally, when you release a new console, you have something to showcase the console. Everything they've shown up to now is old games. They're PS4 games. There's like one exception, which was Dragon's Dogma 2, which is running on RE Engine that runs on PS4 and Xbox One.
Spider-Man 2018 was the game that was used to show off the PS4 Pro.
Yeah, but at least, well, did that come out the same year? PS4
It
Pro
came out 2016. That was 20. So it hadn't come out yet at that time, and it was actually, I don't know if it was announced at that event or like before that, but the point is it was an unreleased new game that was coming out, and like, hey, here's what it's going to look like on PS4 Pro. Here's the difference.
Exactly. How can they not show something new, right? We are, ground up making this game as awesome as it can be on the PS5 Pro. Right, that usually every time you have a console, you're like, this game is being designed ground up for the. Where's the game? Like,
isn't there a state of play coming up?
It's old.
Yeah, but this state of play that's coming up, I heard that it's like indies.
It's all third parties, and like, is it all indies too? On top of
I thought that's the rumor. It was indies and third party. Don't know. But
I hope they have something up their sleeves here.
Let's be fair. Indies can have a pro mode. They can have a pro mode.
And they will. But like, it's really they're gonna bank on indies. Okay, fine, whatever. Like Baby Steps is gonna look really really good. Okay, but this Horizon, Zero Dawn remake, remaster, whatever. This is what they do. They remastered Last of Us Part 2 that came out in 2020.
I know.
Right. So like,
crazy.
this is just what they're doing. I whatever. And I think the real reason is they want you to buy it again at full price, and this is where you're gonna get the upgrade. So if you thought you were going to get your PS4, PS5 Pro upgrades for free, good luck. You're going to be paying. You're going to be buying the remastered edition. You're going to be buying the director's cut remastered edition. That's just what they're going to do. This is what they're going to do. You should just.
Let me just ask you this, Jake. Do you think that this is just their way of saying, "Hey, we don't have any games right now. Here's another remaster." You know, what's going on with Sony?
They do want to. I mean, what's going on is that, again, game development budgets and times have ballooned out of control, and games are just taking way longer to make than they used to. That's the problem. And they have to pad out their, release schedule with games. If they are lacking, they're gonna, like, that's a problem. I think that if Sony had a history of with these, like, because you have, like, they did more heavy remasters than others. Like The Last of Us Part 1 was like a, bringing The Last of Us up to the standard, like visual standard 2, and then going a little bit further. Stream isn't lagging again, is it?
I don't see it lagging yet.
Okay, no, it looks good.
Okay.
All right, so what I think that this Horizon thing is going to be, first off, I think they're, with the Lego Horizon thing, isn't there like a show or a movie or something that's going to be releasing? I think they want to have something like,
well, that got canceled because the person that was leading that project, there was some controversy about it. I can't remember what the controversy was, but
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, and so that.
But anyways, but they probably worked on this while that was still being worked on. But I think they're probably going to be bringing Horizon Zero Dawn up to the visual standards of Forbidden West, so that extreme close-up detail, that probably reanimating the dialogue, which always looked a little stiff in that original one. So that's my guess, is that they're doing something like that. They, in some interview about the PC port of Horizon Forbidden West, somebody asked about ray tracing, if that was going to be in there, and one of the Guerrilla developers said no, but keep a lookout for that. So I wouldn't be surprised if they did something kind of like Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora. Maybe for the PS5 Pro, they enhanced the ray tracing a little bit. That's also come out on PC. I think they're probably going to delay that by like 6 months to a year, like they did with The Last of Us Part 1. But yeah, I could see that being used as a PS5 Pro showcase. Now, if they did that and gave it as, they're not going to do this, but if they gave it as like a $10 to $20 upgrade fee for people who own Zero Dawn, that'd be probably fine, because they got to put in development effort to like reanimate the dialogue and add all those extra assets and redo all that stuff. So that's understandable. But they're not going to do that. They're going to charge, I mean, it could be $70. Totally possible. The Last of Us was, but they're gonna charge full price for this. People are gonna have to rebuy it.
Full price for this Horizon Zero Dawn?
Oh, if they're taking the visuals of Zero Dawn and making it like Forbidden West, that's not as much of a gap as The Last of Us to The Last of Us Part 1. It's not that much of a gap, but they're still remaking assets and like reanimating stuff, again, assuming that's what they're doing. So I think they're going to just charge full price for it. I mean, the Horizon games, as much as people dunk on them as being kind of generic, they sell well. They sell in large numbers.
I wonder how, I wonder if it's going to be an in-house studio doing that or an outside development studio. We don't know.
If they're adding ray tracing and pushing tech a little bit, I think Guerrilla themselves will at least be having a hand in it.
Okay, see, that's when I call them out and say that's kind of a waste of resources, don't you think?
I agree, but like, it's possible they might have just looked at the economics of it, and it's like, Guerrilla can put all their effort right now into getting their next game out, whether that's Horizon 3 or whatever they decide to do, and it's just not going to be ready for the PS5 generation. Like, it's going to have to come out next generation because it's just going to take so long to make. So we have to do this. Like it's our only, like, Guerrilla Games needs to have money pumping into it too. Sony needs money pumping into it to keep stuff running, and this might just be the decision they made. Based on that.
Yeah, maybe. I'm
not defending. I'm just explaining.
No.
Because I know there's probably people in the chat that are understandably a little put off by this thing's existence. I am too. But I kind of understand why they're doing it.
Because there's so many other games out there that I would rather them freaking remaster over this. There's a lot of older titles out there that need remakes over freaking something that came out
Bloodborne.
in 2018 or 2017.
Miyazaki said that Sony was the one holding back Bloodborne getting re-released. Not them.
Wow.
They said they're more than happy. Well, they didn't say they're more than happy to do it, and Sony is the one blocking it. They had to be careful on their wording, but it's not From Software's decision to not be re-releasing that. That's all Sony.
Yeah.
Well, look, the remaster, remake, whatever thing. Look, everybody does that, right? Nintendo does a bunch of them. Xbox does a bunch of them. I'm not annoyed with just the remaster, remake. It's like, give me games. Where are your new games? So your new games were Concord, which failed, and then you got Lego Horizon. Okay, that's cool. What else you got? And that's the problem I'm running into, right? Like, I would expect at this point they need to tell me what's next year. And if they're not even going to tell me one game of theirs that's next year, that means I have no confidence Marathon is coming. I have no confidence Fair Games is coming. I have no confidence Venom is coming. The only one that I think is going to happen is Death Stranding 2, because I think that's going to be at the Game Awards because of that Kojima Keeley thing. I think that's where you're going to see Death Stranding 2, and it's going to come out whatever next year. Okay, cool. What else you got? What else do you have? And that's the problem. Like, you have to create enthusiasm. You're selling a console and no games. Now somebody else did this, Xbox, and got lambasted for it, and that's right. They should have been lambasted for it. Like, where are the games? That's what should happen, right? At least they had, like, Halo. Okay, got delayed. Fine, you at least know Halo is coming. And then they showed Forza and all those other games, right? So you see, like, fine, at least they're coming. And the next year they did release a bunch of games. Fine. But
2021 in my opinion, was a fantastic year for the Xbox brand in terms of game. Like, 2021 had me really looking up to the future of the brand and the console. And by the way, that year was the year that they saw like a sales spike, because they had like a pretty decent number of games. I think 2 or 3 90+ Metacritic games that year: Flight Sim, Forza Horizon 5, and like one other game. I think
Deathloop. I think Deathloop was up there, but that wasn't on Xbox.
No, that's on PlayStation. But they honored that exclusivity deal.
Yes.
Pete in the chat says Pete said some Xbox fanboys love roadmaps more than actual games. Well, some Sony guys, fanboys, love sales more than games. I don't know. It's just weird. It's
people,
just that way.
I mean, people that are really like attached to a platform, people that are really attached to a platform, when they're not getting games, they just, the hopium kind of sets in.
Yeah, for me, I just want good games. That's it. I don't care where they're at. I'll be there. I'll play it. Like, it doesn't matter.
I'm getting a Switch too. Yeah, I fully expect Nintendo's first party to like be more than enough to carry that thing. Awesome. I actually wonder. Now Nintendo. It's been a long time since Switch 1 launched, so they've probably had time to develop games for it. But I wonder if Nintendo is going to be slowed down by development budget and timing because of the hardware capabilities of that. Like, I wonder if they're going to fall into the same trap that Sony did and Microsoft.
And what they are.
Yeah.
That's why they're delaying. They were trying to get the games ready.
The Switch one's hardware, like the SoC has been ready for years. Like, literally, we've heard murmurings about the T239 being complete for at least a couple years now. So, I think they're delaying the release to make sure they have a nice, huge game lineup at launch, and to wait for Switch 1 to slow down a little bit.
Hey, Hargeet, what's this I'm hearing about with the PlayStation 6? I guess Sony is moving forward with AMD over Intel. Intel losing $30 billion possibly on this deal they could have had. AMD, though, will be going forward with them. And apparently they're going to be looking at backwards compatibility for PS6.
So, like, they say that's about it. And, like, the way they do backwards compatibility on the PlayStation side is to cut the clock rate and make it the same as it used to be, right? And maybe cut cores, things like that, right? So it's going to be very similar in performance, so it just cuts it that way. With the way Xbox does it, they don't care about any of that. they're doing an OS virtualization layer, and you basically just run up a 360, you run up an Xbox original OS, you run up an Xbox. Well, in the case of Xbox One, they basically just run it and then let it go, right? But essentially, you're running a virtualized container, and therefore they don't care what the underlying hardware is. They'll just map it out. It'll just work on whatever, right? So they're not as worried about clock rates and stuff like that. But that's the way PlayStation's been doing it. It helps them, but ultimately they don't have to keep following that pattern. They could easily switch if they wanted to. It just depends on if they want to, right? That does mean this dev cost to do that. You'd have to do some work to make that work. But it does make it interesting if there's capabilities you can gain by doing so. Going to Intel, I don't know if that really helps. They do have graphical capability now, right? But it's not really on par with NVIDIA and AMD. I'd put it Intel, AMD, NVIDIA. But like, if you were saying, hey, we're going to jump into NVIDIA, maybe do an all-in NVIDIA, that would be an interesting mix.
Well, I would think that.
I think hell will freeze over before that happens.
I would think NVIDIA and Intel would be more expensive than using AMD as well, right?
No, that's actually a major problem is like with the original Xbox and the PS3 is NVIDIA would not lower cost over time. Like that was one of the things that like held the PS3 back from being cut in cost for so long.
So what gives with the Switch 2? Why are they going with NVIDIA if they're so expensive?
Because they went with the cheap chip to begin with.
Yeah, because they used NVIDIA for Switch 1 because like Switch 1 was designed with as many off-the-shelf parts as possible because again they wanted to lower the R&D budget as much as possible because they didn't know if it was going to be another flop like Wii U. So they used an off-the-shelf Tegra X1 to power that thing, and that worked out for them.
Oh,
so
shoot.
Nintendo
Breaking news, guys. Breaking news. The ESRB just rated a remaster for The Last of Us 3. They just rated a remaster for The Last of Us 3.
They're really forward thinking on that.
Forward thinking. Remaster for Last of Us 3 has already been rated. Oh my God.
But as for that whole Intel thing,
hilarious.
This came from Moore's Law is Dead. People have mixed opinions on his leaks. I find them to be pretty accurate. Like he was dead on about when FSR3 was going to be announced. He has been pretty much dead on about every Intel thing for the past couple of years. And he also was the one who leaked everything about the PS5 Pro to the point where Sony even copyright struck his channel and tried to go after him legally. So I would say he probably has a decent amount of knowledge on this, but he said that Microsoft actually bid Intel and AMD against each other for the next Xbox. Like Intel was willing to. They wanted a device that's built on their node and their newest graphics, and they approached. They work with Microsoft on the Surface and a bunch of other computers. So obviously Microsoft talks to them. AMD did end up getting the contract for that. We can guess the reasons why. I have my reasons. But it wouldn't surprise me if Intel also approached Sony. I mean, Intel's number one strength for its entire existence has basically been how well it works with OEMs and system integrators. So I imagine that would also carry over to console design. But I think that their graphics is, at least Alchemist, I don't know how Battle Mage is, but their first round of like discrete graphics wasn't very efficient as far as like die space versus performance, and consoles are all about wattage and efficiency and die space, and they probably just weren't ready in that regard. AMD's got that down perfect. Like they do it better than anyone else.
Yeah. Hargeet, anything else on this AMD PS6?
Yeah, I mean, look, the other part of it is, in general, Intel has been a little bit behind on power. So they draw a little bit more. You don't want your console to draw too much power, but that's going to be a little thing that they have to work through.
I'm looking at my i9, by the way, that has that was over volted. Apparently, I had to undervolt it.
So they want to stay under a power envelope, and AMD just tends to do a better job there.
Intel Lunar Lake's looking promising. I'm kind of excited for that.
Which one?
For those that don't know, that's Intel Lunar Lake. That for those that don't know, that's like Intel's new super, like for thin and light laptops and possibly handheld gaming PCs. A really small die with like decent processing and really good graphics and decent AI in a really small package. So they're getting there.
We'll see how they do.
But they're using TSMC for that. They're not using their own nodes for that like they did for like the 4900K, for example. So. Yes. How much of that is Intel and how much of that is just them using TSMC?
That's the thing, right? AMD's been using them for a while, TSMC, right? So, but anyway, so like I think that's one of the other key factors, and it's been working. It's like it just as far as the consoles, a couple of gens now, it's been pretty good. It tends to meet their needs, so it's cool. The only notable thing for me would be if they went with NVIDIA for graphics because it gives you a bit more capability. But I think FSR4, which is another topic, will potentially make it as close as it's going to be. And if they have that capability, I don't know that they necessarily need to jump to NVIDIA. I think the ray tracing is the thing that's left. We'll see how far
They'll catch up with that eventually.
Yeah, and at some point it becomes superfluous, right? We get to a point where it's good enough, right? And I think we're gonna get there pretty soon. And by the time these next gen consoles come out, hopefully they'll be pretty good, and that'll be good enough at that point.
Well,
right?
Sony and especially Sony, but Microsoft to a smaller extent, basically design the graphics architectures alongside AMD, which is, by the way, why RDNA 2 was so good, and then RDNA 3 was at first kind of questionable. It's good now, but. So they kind of designed those together. So this is going to get clipped, but my prediction is that FSR4, which we were already kind of told by an AMD executive that's going to be AI accelerated. I think that PSSR and FSR4 were worked on by Sony and AMD at the same time, concurrently. And I think that they're going to be very similar and related to each other. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw like machine learning block and possibly even FSR4 ready for RDNA 4's launch, which is end of this year, early next year. That's just a prediction of mine. But
yeah, which
they work on those together, which is why I think like AMD, yeah, they're behind now, but that's just because they built their SoC to how Sony and Microsoft needed them. And if Sony wants path tracing next gen, AMD will get path tracing in there. They'll make it work
on console.
Absolutely. If Sony wanted that as their target for their next console, AMD would design path tracing hardware into their next graphics architecture, RDNA 6 or whatever's gotcha. Ready for PS6.
Gotcha. Now, in terms of the PS5 Pro, another reason why I wanted to have you on tonight is because we've seen more of the PS5 Pro in action. Coming from Digital Foundry, I guess they got a few minutes here and there of certain games. And so far from what I've personally seen, I'll just give my 2 cents real quick. It doesn't make me want one any more than I did a week ago. This $700 price point for me, I'm out. It's just, for me, it's not looking good. And the main reason I base this on is the fact that it has the same CPU. So I know when it comes to some of these games that are CPU bound, we're still not going to see those 60 frames games coming to that console, despite their PSSR, despite what they're doing with their GPU. It's not going to really uplift those games at all. So games like Dragon's Dogma 2, where they were just all over the place with their uncapped modes on console, I don't see them locking that down to 60 with the current CPU being the same. That's just the way I look at it. So for me, it's not for me. I'm not going to come down on anybody who says, "Oh, this looks really good to me. I can't wait to get this." That's fine. I'm not going to pocket watch. You guys can do what you will. But for me, I'm not going to get it. And I usually buy every console.
Yeah, that's that. I mean, that's how I know you've changed, because you used to be all about like, oh, I'll get all these because I love collecting tech.
Yeah,
it's kind of how I was, but I sold my PS5 and Xbox Series X because they were just kind of collecting dust. But yeah, I kind of agree. I think it's important, and this is something I've been saying for years and years and years. It's important to keep your expectations in check when a new console is announced. You'll see a lot of people get caught up in the hype train, and they'll hear the console manufacturer say one thing and they'll misunderstand what it actually means. Mm-hmm. And it's just important to keep those expectations in check. Luckily, with the PS5 Pro, Sony told us exactly what to expect. They said it's going to have up to 45% more GPU performance because the GPU is bigger, and up to 2 to 3 times of certain ray tracing in certain scenarios. So we knew exactly what to expect. Up to 45%, performance puts it at least as far as rasterization goes, around a 7700 XT, which is a pretty good mid-range GPU on the PC. I mean, I'd personally suggest a 7800 XT over that, but it's not bad. That's not a bad target. And 2 to 3 times ray tracing, I don't really know what, like 2 to 3 times, compared to the PS5, which is kind of similar to an RX 6700. I don't really know what PC GPU that would align it with, but it'll be much easier to compare with PC hardware when RDNA 4 launches. We'll have a better idea probably within like the next month or two. AMD is going to inevitably announce those and show them off, and we'll have better comparisons with PC hardware. It's not a 4070. People kind of misunderstood what Rich said in, like, he was in a podcast with Destin or something, and he said that the closest PC equivalent would be a 4070. This thing's not going to match up to a 4070. First off, if you look at Tech Power Up's graphics ranking, it's the 4070 base is like 60 to 65% over the RX 6700, which is, again, what the PS5 is broadly comparable to. So already, like, it's below in raster, and 2 to 3 times ray tracing is not going to be enough to catch up in ray tracing to an Ada Lovelace card.
Yeah, because even with 4070, you can actually do path ray tracing with that card.
You can. You do have to lower the resolution. You oftentimes have to turn on frame generation, but you can do it. You're not going to be doing path tracing, at least not in games like Cyberpunk or Alan Wake on PS5 Pro. It's just not that 2 to 3 times multiplier is just, and that's not across the board. That's in certain calculations. So it's not a 4070, but we'll probably have good RDNA 4 GPUs to compare it to, probably by the end of the year. So just keep a lookout for that. But it's, you're right. Like, it has the same CPUs. The memory got a bit of a boost in speed, so it's going to have a little bit better bandwidth. But otherwise, it's like, the way I looked at it, and Digital Foundry kind of came to the same conclusion. And I do highly recommend watching their DF Direct from this past week, because it goes into a lot more detail than we're going to go into here. But what it looks like on that thing is that 45% jump to the PS5 Pro GPU is mostly going towards PSSR. Because PSSR, like, and this probably if you experiment around with DLSS, but upscalers have their own overhead. Like, if you just render a game at native 1440p, it's going to have a way higher frame rate than, like, a game running at DLSS quality 4K, which renders at 1440p and upscales to 4K. It has a cost. So it's not free performance. It's better than, like, native 4K, for example. Like, it's way less overhead than that. But, like, they basically made the GPU big enough to give some overhead for PSSR. So that's why we're seeing in a lot of these demos that were sent to Digital Foundry and what was used to show off the thing, it's mostly just running, PS5 settings, but it's massively improving the image quality, which is great. I think AI upscaling is going to be important and kind of necessary for future consoles. But it's not a comprehensive change. Like, you're not running games at ultra. Even Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart was not running at PC's ultra settings. We didn't see them showing off any of the PC exclusive ray tracing features like shadows or ambient occlusion. This is going to be a PS5 with better image quality, and every so often they're going to be ticking up the ray tracing a little bit, and that's fine. If you're excited for that, if that interests you, then, like, don't let anyone tell you not to buy it. Just go ahead and buy it. I've been arguing with people this is dumb. I shouldn't be doing this, but I've been arguing with people all week on Twitter, like,
yes, you have,
about the strength of the thing. And people think I'm doing that because I'm trying to, like, downplay the thing. And that's not what I'm not telling you not to buy it or that it sucks. I'm just saying, keep your expectations in check. If you know that you're getting it because you want a PS5 with better image quality, more power to you. That's what you're getting. Just don't buy that thinking you're getting a 4070 PC for $700, because that's just not what it is.
Yeah, and don't think that you're going to get 60 frames on every game either. That's not what it's for. And Alex Battaglia from Digital Foundry said as much, and I loved what he said on there. He said it so perfectly, and he was like, if your mindset is, you're going into this, you want 60 frames on every game, do not buy this. He's like, that's not what they're aiming for with this. Like you said, it's really about the PSSR. It's about that upscaling tech. I see your Zevia or Zevia.
Somebody in the chat wants to know, so I'm like, fine, here you go.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
it's the PS5 Pro. You're right. It's not, and Alex is right. It's not a machine that's designed to be like, okay, here's your PS5. You're getting 60 frames across the board. What that thing is for, what the PS5 Pro is for. Now the PS4 Pro came into existence because 4K TVs started to become popular and ubiquitous in midway through the 8th gen. Sony knew they were going to have 4K TVs, and they wanted their game console to be able to take a better advantage. That's why the PS4 Pro existed. PS5 Pro is for those PlayStation gamers that are enticed, like these are diehard PlayStation gamers that are enticed to move to PC because of the power difference. And they're just trying to keep some of those people in their ecosystem. Like Sony's putting their first party games on PC. What those are for is for those PC gamers that will not buy a PlayStation. They want them buying PlayStation games. That is not to entice people away from the PlayStation console.
By the way,
they want people on the console.
By the way, Big Madmo, I want to address that really quick. According to Hip Hop Gamer, he says GTA 6 will do 4K 60 on the Pro. No, it will not. No, it won't. And
if we saw in that trailer what GTA 6, like all those NPCs, we know it's going to have insane physics calculations. Like
first of all, it's not even going to hit 4K 30. First of all, it's not going to hit 4K 30, let alone 4K 60. I told people this on Twitter as well. I said, if this game does hit 60 frames, if it has a performance mode, let's say, on the PS5 Pro, then it will have a performance mode on the base PS5 as well.
On all of them.
Because this type of game, it's either going to be CPU bound or GPU bound. It's going to be really taxing on the CPU or it's not. And if it's not that taxing on the CPU, then I can see a performance mode. But it'll be across the board. And at that point, you think it'll tax the CPU because of all the AI and stuff?
Not only that, but we also know it's going to have ray tracing. Rockstar already pretty much confirmed that. That's a CPU load also.
Oh, yeah.
So
ray tracing.
And now if Hip Hop Gamer's talking about like upscaled 4K, like we're talking semantics here. If they're using PSSR or even FSR2 in the base version, which, by the way, they use that for Red Dead Redemption, the remaster that came out. So like Rockstar has a history of that already. But if they're talking upscaled 4K, then sure. But I don't think it's... If they do offer a performance mode, I think it's going to be shaky. I think it's going to be spending a lot of time in the VRR window. But this is Rockstar. I think they're just going to cap it to 30, maybe offer a 40 mode.
That's what I believe overall. That's what I've been telling people too. I say, it's Rockstar. At the end of the day, they love you to double dip on their games. And they know that people are waiting for a 60 frames Red Dead 2 to be hitting the consoles. That's
why they're, by the way, I want to just mention that's why the game's not launching on PC day one, is because they want people to double dip. They gave the reason, or an ex-Rockstar dev said they're doing it because they want to target the platform where the money is first. GTA 5 sold, it was like, I think PlayStation number 1, PC a very close number 2, and then Xbox a distant third. And GTA 6 is launching on Xbox and PlayStation first. If they wanted to target the platforms that brought in money, it would be targeting PlayStation and PC first and going to Xbox later. So that already there proves to me that they just want people to double dip for a PC version.
Yeah, Facts. It is. It's just double dip. One thing on the ray tracing thing, we do also look at the fact that they went from 36 to 60 CUs, right? So that plus some tech changes, right? So you really do just double grunt almost, right? That might be part of that 2 times. Plus, they are going from an RDNA maybe 2, right? Because they pulled the ray tracing from further RDNAs into their 1.5.
It's hard to say what it is because Sony used a lot of custom parts for the PS5, and they're probably going to do that here. Exactly. Like we know it's using RDNA 4. Like Sony and AMD co-developed the ray tracing features that's going to be in RDNA 4, and they also put it in the PS5 Pro. So it's not going to be RDNA 4, but it used some co-developed.
Yeah. So that's kind of it, right? So it's going to be partially it's newer capability, but it's also partially just raw grunt. We just have a raw grunt capability with more CUs available, right? So that's part of the 2 to 3, just to mention that piece of it. But yeah, we'll see how well that works.
Yeah,
we'll see how well that works, right?
Yeah, it's still interesting to me because, again, I'm always interested in new tech, especially when it comes to these consoles, gaming. So when I see more of this PS5 Pro, it still interests me to look at it at least and go, wow, that looks good. Because I mean, Rebirth, for instance, they showed some of that today.
That was a massive improvement.
Yeah, it looked
that should have been
good.
more. That should have been focused on in the showcase stream that they showed off the console. But I don't think they wanted to throw the PS5 version of that game onto the bus. It's still relatively recent.
Yeah, it's
but
funny,
that was a massive improvement.
What's funny though is like, people will be like touting that and saying, well, look at the graphic fidelity and it's at 60. And I'm like, yeah, but the game was already at 60. So that part, it's not a really CPU bound game. So you're not really going to see a difference there. But the graphics, yeah, it's definitely less blurrier than it was. And
way less.
It's funny though to see the comments on Digital Foundry.
Less
I don't know
less fizzling.
If you saw the comments at Digital Foundry for that video, like all the comments are just like hating on the PS5 Pro so bad because of its price point. That's the number one thing I think people keep taking away from this. Like most of the people that hate on this thing, it's because of the price point. And I don't blame them. I mean, for me, it's out of reach. It's ridiculous to pay for. A $700 for a console. When I think about that, it's like that already gets you to start thinking about, well, what could I get out of a PC for a few $100s more? Could I do better than that? You know what I'm saying? That's that spot where you start to think outside of consoles. And I don't know, man, because this sets a precedence, right? I'm fully on board with. I mean, I'm not on board with this. I'm not backing it at all, but I do believe that next generation, this kind of sets the price point for the PS6. I think they're going to come out at $700.
That's what I mentioned beforehand is like node shrinks, which is kind of the main, like we remember PS4 Pro launched 3 years after PS4 and doubled the GPU power. Like you weren't seeing that to go from 30 to 60 because the CPU was so weak on that thing, but you were often very frequently, like even lazy PS4 Pro versions were usually doubling the resolution from like 1080p to 1440p. And that was in 3 years. And they were able to get that released at the price of the launch MSRP of the PS4, which was $400. And now here we are with the PS5 Pro. We're 4 years out from the launch of the PS5. The PS5 hasn't gone down in price. If anything, it's gone up in price in a lot of areas. And we're getting a roughly 45% increase instead of a doubling for $200 premium over the, well, actually, no, like $250 premium because of the, digital only. So like we're not seeing the same jumps that we used to. Like node shrinks at foundries that build graphics cards and processors just aren't advancing like they used to. Like the new nodes are expensive and they're efficient. You can get a lot of power out of them, but they're expensive. Consoles have to be built to a cost. And that's why I think that that's why I said earlier that I don't think that the PS6 and that next Xbox are going to be graphical fidelity increases. Because if this is the best Sony can do in 4 years and it still results in this huge price increase, I don't think that we're going to see as big of a jump next gen. I think they're going to find other ways to make next gen. It's not going to be a big graphical increase.
Do you think that they're going to go back, Hargeet? Do you think that the Sony's going to go back to subsidizing their consoles? Do you think they're actually not going to take a profit next gen?
If they do, it's going to be for a very short time. I think they're kind of at the point of it's. If they could see a sales like decline because of the price, then that would be one thing. This generation has been so crazy in that the console prices have increased instead of decreased, right? And so the original digital was right, exactly. Usually it goes down. So the original digital was for PS5 was $400. It's now $450. It's currently $50 more in the US. It's worse everywhere else. Right, the world, the prices around the world are way higher, and it's people are still buying it. And like the thing is like if you keep paying, then what's their incentive to stop that? Like
it's like what would happen with phones. Like for a long time, smartphones would not go over like 400 or 500. Then Apple decided like, here's $1,000 phone because no one else wanted to take that plunge. Like and now people actually bought it. And
now everybody's
and the
paying
prices of the
1,000
phones?
plus, for so many phones like Samsung.
I think we could
1800.
see something similar with consoles. My problem with I think most people's problem with the PS5 Pro's price is not really the level of power, but it's $700 is a lot to ask of the mass market. Even 500 is kind of pushing it a little bit, but they'll put up with that.
Yeah, I would say even
So
600 is pushing it. Yeah, pushing it big time.
So it's too expensive for the mass market, but it's not cutting edge enough to really blow people's mind like even a mid to upper range PC will. So it's kind of stuck in that, and that's why I think it's designed to just keep those diehard PlayStation fans that are enticed to switch to PC. And I think it's going to be a limited run.
Hey, real quick, Nick Marcel in the chat. He says Dragon's Dogma 2 is running at 60 FPS on the PS5 Pro per Digital Foundry. Last I thought they only had like a 3-second clip of Dragon's Dogma.
Yeah, they didn't have much footage.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe they could pull some magic and find a way to get it to work. I'm not going to discount it.
No, anything can run at 60 for 3 seconds. Like so a lot can do that. I don't know. It depends, but they said that the 3 seconds they got was just too short to even, analyze. So I don't know.
We'll see what happens with that one. But I know that game is very, very CPU bound on PC. So and again, PC and console versions are different. Consoles can offload a lot of stuff that PC does on CPU. Like PS5 has decompression block and dedicated audio and stuff. So not 1-to-1, but generally, if a game is CPU bound on PC, it's usually CPU bound on console also, and that game's very CPU bound on PC.
Yeah. And if, like I said, if 3 seconds is a locked 60, that's 3 seconds. I'd like to see a lot more. That's something I've seen a lot of this generation was a lot of games that had performance modes, but they were never locked 60 on console. It's very rare to have them locked.
We had that though, right? There was an uncapped mode, so you could run it, and it didn't quite reach 60, but it did have 60.
Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
But it was probably like hitting 30s and 40s.
Usually, when you were in towns, it was in in busier areas with a lot of NPCs, CPU.
Yeah.
Usually, that's when it would drop.
No, but you know what? Again, Nick, I'm not telling you not to buy this console, not to be excited for it. You can be excited as you want. For me though, there is no excitement for this console, and I usually am very excited for the new consoles. It's just. It's not doing it for me. Hopefully the PS6,
I got a
PS6.
question for you. If you had not gotten this PC, I mean, you were still a console only gamer, and you had not played games. Great question. Like if you had not played games and seen in person what a modern gaming PC is truly capable of, what would be your opinion and thought on the PS5 Pro? Would you have a different opinion?
It might be different. I'll be honest. It might be different because, again, I don't know. I wouldn't know what I'd be missing right now, and I would look to the PS5 Pro as something that I am missing. I need that. That looks shinier. That looks better. You know what I'm saying? And I might gravitate to wanting to own that. But even then, at $700, that's steep for a console.
And I mean, YouTube comparisons just. In screenshots just don't do it justice.
It's not.
You don't truly see what new hardware and more powerful hardware is capable of unless you see it running in person. I mean, that's when it really.
So it's funny. You can play Halo Infinite at 120 on console, right? And one of the players told me, "Look, you have a 4090 PC. You should just try it there because it actually is better, even though it's the same frame rate. It's better on PC." And I'm like. That's got to be crap, right? And it is better. It actually is better. It reacts better. It just is. And you just don't know that until you try it, right? Until you actually play it. Because fidelity wise, I'm like, okay, yeah, it looks a little bit better, but yeah, no, it plays better. The delay is better on the PC. It just is. It's just minor things like that you just don't get until you actually experience it, right? So,
but no, Jake's
like that exists.
Jake's right though. Like, we watch all this stuff on Digital Foundry and then you actually play the game and you get to see how much better it looks. Like everything that I've seen run on a 4090 through YouTube looks amazing, but looks even better when I booted up on my 4090. I'm like, holy crap, that's so clean. It's so,
people get upset at Digital Foundry for zooming in and stuff, but like that's the only way they can that zooming in is the only way they can really show those differences. You don't need to zoom in to see those differences when you're like sitting in front of a computer monitor or relatively close to a TV.
Yeah, and
that's the point they make.
And with that said, the whole point is, yes, this PS5 Pro will look even better in your living room for sure. Nobody's saying that. Nobody's discounting that. I'm just saying that for me, the price point, it's just a little out there. I was talking to Colt the other day, last week, before this was even shown, the price or any of the reveal, and I told him, I said, look, he asked me point blank, will you buy the PS5 Pro? And I said, there's a couple. There's two things that would make me want to buy the Pro. One, if I knew that all the games were going to be 60 frames on this console, and two, it's no more than $600. But I'm not going to get that. And that was my criteria for buying the console. And I'm not getting that. And I was told that by Digital Foundry themselves. They said, if you're expecting that, don't get it. And also the $100 over my price budget, just not feasible. Just not going to do it. So,
but if you're excited for it, more, like I said, more power to you. I hope that if you're excited for the PS5 Pro, I hope it exceeds your expectations. I actually really hope that they use PSSR and put that into games like Star Wars Outlaws that run at 720p to hit 60. I hope they do that, and I hope they blow away your expectations, and I hope that you're super happy with your PS5 Pro purchase. I don't want to see you waste money. But you have to also understand, if you're excited for the PS5 Pro, you have to understand why a lot of people aren't.
And I think most of it is that price point. It's just thinking about all past generations, and I've spent that much on a console before, and I regretted it. I had immense buyer's remorse, and that was for the 3DO back in the day. I paid $699 for that thing. And that was
what year did you get that?
Oh, that was in the 90s. I forgot when it was. But I remember I was working at that time. I paid my hard-earned dollars on that thing, and there was only a few games that I liked on it, and they were all fighting games like Samurai Showdown and stuff. That thing was just, I had such buyer's remorse.
Well, $699, and it released in 1991, I think.
Yes, Panasonic 3DO.
I just guessed 1993, just whatever. $699 in $1993 is $15.22 in today's money. So, that's actually something.
Yeah.
I mean, what did the Xbox 360 launch at? Like $399 for the arcade and $499 for the.
No, $299, $399.
$399.
So
$399.
You know what?
$299 for the base.
So $399 in 2005 is $643 in today's money, but that had a disk drive included. But no hard drive.
You know how we do things. We live and learn. We learn from mistakes. That was one of them for me. And the other one was the time I bought horse armor on the 360 for Oblivion. And when that's when I found out what microtransactions were, kids, and I hated them from then on. I never bought another microtransaction because of horse armor. I thought this was going to be a cool thing that actually worked in the game. It was going to protect my horse and look cool, and no.
Just a cosmetic.
Just a freaking cosmetic. And it was like $4 or whatever it was at the time. And I was like, what did I spend this on? Why did I do this? It was dumb. So I learned.
That's like what, $10 in today's money or something? I closed the inflation. I love the inflation calculator. That's so much fun to play with. Like you remember old prices and you just punch them into there and you're like, holy crap.
Yeah, but we've also had a lot of things come down in prices when it comes to goods sold and stuff. So it's, I don't know. It's still relevant though. Anything else you guys want to talk about here before we go?
Did we cover?
I covered the stuff I wanted to talk about. Let me check my little checklist that I.
Oh, there was the indie thing. I don't know if you want to.
That I haphazardly sent to you in Twitter DMs.
Yeah. Tell me what those are.
There's the indie thing. I don't know if you want to talk about that or not. But
what's the indie thing? Indiana Jones. Okay, so Steven Spielberg and George Lucas are heavily behind this Indiana Jones game. Are you looking forward to this at all, Jake? Indiana Jones?
I mean, I pretty much always look forward to anything id puts out. I think id Software is still top 5 game studio in the entire industry, if you ask me. By the way, Microsoft owning id Tech is a massive asset, and I wonder if they're actually going to fully take advantage of that, because that's like
I hope they do.
that is a really good engine. Like you can get you can turn on ray tracing and crank the level of detail up and still run Doom Eternal at like high frame rates, native 4K. It's just astonishing, and it just feels good to play. It's really like anything it puts out, I'm looking forward to. The Indiana Jones, I've never been a huge like Indiana Jones fan, but I'll try this one.
Yeah, but id Tech engine doing a lot of puzzles. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not a big puzzle fan in games. I'm just not. So, unfortunately, for me, I'm still looking forward to playing the game because I am an Indiana Jones fan. I like the movies. So I will play it because to me, what's his name that plays him in this game? Who voices him again? His name eludes me. Anyways, does a great job at doing Harrison Ford's Indiana Jones voice. Really good. Can't believe
I think it's Troy Baker, isn't it?
It's Troy Baker.
Troy
Baker.
It's Troy. Yeah.
He did a good Mark Hamill. He did a good Mark Hamill impression in Arkham. What was the 2013 one that?
Arkham City? Was that Arkham City?
No, it was not Arkham City. It was Arkham Origins.
Origins.
Yeah.
Origins,
He voiced Joker in that one instead of Mark Hamill and did a pretty good impression. So he
Troy's
does
good.
Yeah, he does good impressions.
Really good. But
and good original voices, obviously.
What about you, Hargeet? What do you got to say about this? You excited?
Look, I was very excited to play Indy until they decided to put it out in December, and I'm like, are you not
so many other games
confident in your game? Like, December is usually the dead zone. But okay, I hope that's not the case, and I hope it's just a scheduling issue. But yeah, I was very excited to play this. It's supposed to be between, well, what ended up becoming first and third, but in chronological order, second and third. So it's between whatchamacallit, the Raiders of the Lost Ark and Last Crusade, right? But they filmed it in different order, right? Temple of Doom was supposed to be a prequel. So it's like the right area. It's like the peak of indie. So I'm hoping it'll be good. And with George Lucas and Spielberg involved, I'm hoping
for a good story. Yeah.
Exactly. Lend some like real credibility as to what the environment is, right? The milieu of Indiana Jones, right? So you're kind of getting that original feel from the original creators. So hopefully that's there, right? So they really do have a very Indiana Jones-like game or like environment. So that part of it is kind of cool. I hope it really comes out to be a good game. I was just shocked they wanted to do it in December, and I'm like, okay, do you not feel confident in the game, or why would you do that? But okay, maybe it really is just they have no scheduling. Yeah, they can't put it anywhere else. Like, okay, but all right, so let's see if it's good. I hope it's good.
Yeah, and for people that don't know me when it comes to games, and I'm not saying the gameplay in this is going to be mid at all, but if it were to be, I've played mid gameplay games before that had really great stories that really intrigued me and compelled me to keep playing and beat the game. So, if there's a lot of puzzles that you guys like, but I don't, I might go through the game if the story's good and the pacing is good. I'll go through it and have a fun time.
I could
like
see that.
Puzzle games, so I'm good with it. So.
Yeah, for me, like I mentioned it earlier, like Indiana Jones is probably on the bottom of my list of Microsoft games I'm most looking forward to. For me, it's like Flight Simulator 2024 at the very tippy top. Probably Fable below that. I mean the stuff they've shown so far has been kind of
Fable
mixed,
looks pretty good. Yeah,
I have faith in Playground Games. They're a really amazing studio and they know how to do good game design. So I actually am looking forward to that. Avowed looks interesting. I like the Pillars universe, and it looks like they're actually be pushing tech on that one on PC. So that'll be kind of cool. And yeah, Indiana Jones probably at the bottom.
Yeah. Avowed's up there at the top for me too, because I like Obsidian. I like what they do. they're very good with their RPGs. So I have confidence in this game, and I had confidence
Oh,
ever
me
since
too.
we first saw it. And even when we saw the gameplay and people were like, it doesn't look that good. I was still like, hey, this is Obsidian. This is Obsidian. Yeah. I'm still down to play it. So we'll see. Until they fault me, I will be behind them 100%. So
are you guys excited for Stalker 2?
Yes, I actually am. I want to play it. I like the Metro series.
And they have a documentary. I think is it next week? I think they have a documentary coming pretty soon. Maybe it's a week after or something like that. I don't know. But there's a documentary coming about like what they had to go through to make this game. Right? All
That's
the fun
crazy.
that they had
I know the whole war and everything.
Yeah. Check that out. I can't remember what day it is, but it's coming up in the next week or two.
By the way, before
check that out. Of course, we have TGS coming next week.
Yeah, TGS is next week, guys. Before we get into this next stuff, Angry Hippie had a super chat here I want to read. Thank you very much, by the way. With a 5 says, Sony sold TVs with the promise of HDMI 2.1 for PS5. That didn't happen until 2 years later. Yeah, I remember that. There was a whole debacle about that. That was really bad. You're looking at one of the best and biggest TV manufacturers out there that have one of the best and biggest gaming platforms out there, and they did not have their stuff ready, which was crazy to me. And they still didn't even really have it ready when it came to tech like VRR. Like VRR didn't come until like 3 years into the generation. I'm like, what? Where have you been?
VRR that the PS5 right now is kind of half-assed.
And it is, yeah. It doesn't have the low compensation or whatever. It doesn't go really low.
It doesn't have low frame rate compensation. Yeah. Like I think it maxes out at like 48 frames per second. I think before it shuts off, which is just that's not enough.
Ridiculous, right?
No, especially with most.
It's literally why I have an LG instead of a Sony. I love Sony TVs, right? And I was like, okay, I'm gonna like, hey, you're releasing a console. I know you're gonna have an HDMI 2.1, but you don't have an HDMI 2.1 TV. Are you kidding me? Are you serious? Like okay, I kept waiting for an announcement. I'm like, I give up. LG, it's LG.
At least now Sony has some excellent TVs on the market. Like, Sony TVs are great. I think Sony's best devices, like obviously gaming carries them. That's where most of the revenue comes in. Maybe movies also, but audio and totally out of the left field for this one. Nothing to do with this conversation, but cameras and camera sensors. They make the best cameras and camera sensors on the market. For especially professional stuff. It's not even close.
Yeah, it's all like reference for Hollywood, right? They use theirs. Yeah,
absolutely. Nobody does it better than them.
Now, what did you have, Jake, that you wanted to touch upon?
I mean, I saved a little bit of math here. That this is kind of tangentially related to the PS5 Pro, but it's a number that I kind of put together that I wanted to kind of compare. Maybe we'll see how this plays out in the long run of like PS5 Pro's total sales versus like hardware that's as good or stronger than that on PC. I went through the Steam hardware survey.
Oh yeah, wasn't that the main topic we wanted to talk about? You had the whole.
I think we like somebody was guessing like, is the PS6 going to reach a 4080 or not in performance? And that was kind of one of the topics. I think
that's one of it. I think Fonz, what you sent me originally was the Wall Street Journal article about the economics of Xbox.
I remember I did watch that, and I agree generally with theirs that they're going to have to move away from the traditional console model, and I actually do think that Sony their current method's working for them, but I actually do think that there's a chance they could get caught with their pants down if they don't. But but at the same time, they've been doing cloud gaming for a long time, so I think it'll work out for them. But yeah, I generally agree with that. But what I did was the Steam hardware survey. Anyone can look at this right now. It takes random samplings. Like you may occasionally get a pop-up on your PC asking if you want to submit your hardware results to the Steam hardware survey. And the most recent monthly active users figure for Steam, I don't know if this was released or if it was estimated, but this was from like May of this year. 132 million monthly active users on Steam right now, which is a huge number. But so I added up the percentages of all the GPUs on there that like you get percentages of how many people that took the Steam hardware survey, which again is just random. So it's not everybody with Steam, but it's generally pretty accurate. And I added up those percentages and then like multiplied that percentage to 132 million. And starting with stuff like that, I'd say this like 6900 XT and up, that's maybe about like 7.6% of gamers on there on that Steam hardware survey have a graphics card that's as strong as the PS5 Pro or more. and 7.6% of 132 million is about 10 million people, about 10,100,000 people. So I'm wondering how that's going to stack up with PS5 Pro's total sales, if PS5 Pro is going to hit that 10 million mark or not. But I'm wondering if like maybe the total amount or the percentage is going to be similar. Like, is it going to be like 7.6% or 10% or something for PS5 Pro? Kind of like how that level of GPU
that's
or higher
kind of
is
what
on
we were
PC.
thinking. Hitting that 10% mark was probably about where there would be with the Pro model when it comes to all PS5s. This generation. That's about where I would think it would be. Sounds good. But
yeah, that was supposed to go in the conversation earlier, but I did the math and I wanted to have it in here at least at some point.
The one thing I wanted to touch on about that article that I had sent you guys, basically it was a video. I don't know if anybody watched it out there that's listening. The Wall Street Journal, they had a video that was titled "Xbox Lost the Console War. Now it's redefining gaming." And the video talked about Xbox, of course, losing the console war and stuff, but it also raised like questions: is Xbox actually paving a way forward to doing, something different that the rest might have to go down, like all their cloud tech and everything they're doing now with their subservice with Game Pass and stuff like that, and them finding success there. But are they also like having other, the other console manufacturers look their direction and go, hey, is that where we should be heading or whatever? And it was a pretty good video. It wasn't like scathing. It didn't really talk badly about Xbox, which was surprising, to be honest. But it's something that I came away with not disagreeing with at all. I was like, yeah, that's kind of the way you have to see it. Like, because the industry as a whole is changing. And I've said this before. I think Xbox right now, they are on the forefront of that, the cloud market and subservices. They're in the front running for all the for games anyway, for the games industry. So that's the way I see it. I don't know the way you guys saw it too. I guess Jake said he agreed with it, and
generally,
I don't know.
It's always hard to predict where the industry is going to move. Because you just never really know. But yeah, I mean, Microsoft, with their massive amount of money and huge amount of manpower and R&D, like they're in the best position to, if something new pops up, they're in the best position to kind of like prepare for that. They were kind of late to the game for consoles. Like maybe if Microsoft jumped in the, mid 90s, like around the time PlayStation came in, maybe they would have been a more ubiquitous name. So they do have this new chance now, but who knows if like the stuff they're looking for here is actually going to succeed in the long run. Like Game Pass growth has kind of slowed down pretty significantly. Mm-hmm. Internet is still limited enough, even with gigabit internet, like game streaming doesn't look that great. Even with GeForce Now, which is in my opinion, that's the best cloud streaming service as far as quality, and latency is actually really good on there. But like I have gigabit internet, I was hardwired, and I was playing GeForce Now just to try it out, and still wasn't that great. A lot of compression. Latency, while still way better than the other ones, wasn't perfect. And it's been years and years and years, and it's only been getting marginally better. There's going to have to be some type of big breakthrough if they want this stuff to take off and keep growing.
Yeah.
Well, that breakthrough is that they have to put the servers near you, and that's kind of the problem. It becomes too expensive. I don't know where you are in the world as far as country here or whatever, but
yeah, Jake,
the data centers aren't
in the Bay Area. GeForce Now is,
because it's literally where the data centers are.
Perfect,
right? Because San Francisco is one of the hubs.
It's crazy.
So I'm in the Albany, New York area, so I'm across the country from that. And what I find on GeForce Now is that the picture quality is not great, but the latency is quite good. Like,
even the picture quality looks really good. And it's so funny because when I first booted up GeForce Now, I was such a noob. I had my computer sitting here, and I connected my HDMI cable to my TV, and I didn't realize this because I was using my Mac, and when I was using my TV, I was playing and I felt a little bit of latency, but it wasn't that bad. I was like, this ain't too bad. This is better than xCloud, you know, and I'm sitting there playing. And then I realized it was airplaning it over. It was like wirelessly transmitting the feed over to my TV instead of using the hard wire. And I was like, oh, that's why there was latency. As soon as I figured that out, there was no latency, none that I could perceive anyway. But I was blown away by it. I used it for
Microsoft's got to get xCloud up to that par, I think.
Yeah.
Like, they've got to at least get it as good as NVIDIA GeForce.
I was using it for a good 3 months before I got this PC. That's what I was playing on almost exclusively for a while because I was loving the games there. Game Pass was there. It was great.
So you're probably hitting Virginia. That's probably where you're going, which isn't too far, but it's still far enough. And that becomes the headache, right? And then
if they had like a data center around the New York City area, it'd probably be okay.
Yeah, but that's like the problem.
That's like a 3.5 hour drive for me.
Yeah, that would be the thing. Is like it would have to be everywhere, but then it's expensive to do that everywhere. And then the question is it worth it? And this may end up becoming not as big of a deal if you move to PC level, right? Because what they're doing with their xCloud is it's Xboxes that have to literally put Xboxes everywhere. If they decided to instead just use GPU-enabled Windows boxes or something like that, it could change that, right? And then you have those available for AI processing, and then they can shift it over when there's demand to play, games. But I don't know that that's going to be feasible, which is why I always thought this was just like a nice fad to me. It just doesn't make sense because at some point, this thing sitting in your freaking pocket is going to be so powerful that what you were doing with your Mac, casting it to your TV, that's what it'll be able to do, and it'll run everything natively. Right? What would be the point then? At some point, we're just getting to diminishing returns. And if 15 years, don't tell me this thing isn't going to outperform a PS5. It will. Right? It's already getting close to the freaking PS4 or Xbox One. So like you're almost there. And that's the thing is like these things are getting close. They're putting AAA games on these now, right? That's going to keep expanding. Right? At some point, you're just going to have so much power in your freaking pocket that you're just going to say, I'm just going to use that. Because why would I deal with the latency, right? I can download it. It's running on my thing. Or I can still stream it to my device that's running most of the CPU load and GPU load that I need for my low latency things. And that's running here. And the rest of
my Ally, I stream from my desktop. If I'm just in bed, I actually oftentimes stream from my desktop using Moonlight on the Ally. And it's that's actually a really good experience versus playing a game natively on there most of the time. And I'll play the game natively on it if I'm like, in a hotel room or something, not near my desktop.
That's
wow.
Yeah, and that's
something
perfect,
or
right?
something low intensity.
Because then the stream part of it is just like to the display, right? And it's running on your machine locally. You got it, and then it's just streamed to your display locally on your network. I think that's going to be the way it goes. But we'll see. We'll see where it goes. Maybe they do put edge devices everywhere, and you can play games through the cloud. I've always just been hesitant about that one. I just don't know if it's ever going to scale to be cost effective. That's going to be the problem.
I think like Digital Foundry guys think they might be doing this. Moore's Law is Dead thinks they might be doing this, but like I think Microsoft needs to look at the Steam Deck and they need to realize that like they literally own the biggest operating system right now that most people game on, and they need to get a handheld device out there. That the Steam Deck has sold millions of units despite the fact that it only is sold on Steam. Like it's not in any stores. It's not on Amazon. You can't go to a Best Buy and get it. And it's already sold millions of units. People want, and that holds decent value on the used market. Like people want those things. So Microsoft needs to get a handheld. They need to get a Windows and redesign it so that like it has a handheld mode for handheld
100%.
PCs and then
100%.
a desktop mode that just acts like normal Windows. And they need to get, and it needs fixed hardware. It needs to have the shaders that are, can be downloaded to the device, just like with the Steam Deck. So you don't have to deal with compiling shaders or shader comp stutter. And they need to take advantage of the fact that they own the biggest gaming operating system and actually, like, I think that's where they could go. That's something they can do that like Nintendo and Sony can't copy. Valve would be their biggest competitor there. And Valve does not have as much money as them or their infrastructure or their shipping abilities. So that's their biggest strength. That's what I think what they need to focus on is making like
it's the superpower they have is Windows.
they need to take advantage of Windows. They need to make like entry level gaming PCs that have like those fixed hardware so they can download shaders and maybe a little subsidized pricing, but still allow Steam on there if you want to download that. I think that's the direction they could be going.
I hope that is what
that
they're
would,
doing.
I think
and
that
that's
would
what
work
the
out more
rumors
than
were
cloud.
hearing. Yeah, and if you have the Xbox UI, right, and that would be awesome. Xbox
I was
UI
going to say,
on
like,
Windows.
they don't need to design a whole new UI. Literally just make gaming mode just the Xbox UI. There you go.
Yeah.
I mean, the Steam Deck's UI, I mean, it was on the Steam Deck first, but the Steam Deck's gaming mode UI is just Steam Big Picture mode. You can boot that up on your PC right now and have the Steam Deck UI on your PC. So it's all there. They don't have to, like, I'm sure it's probably way more involved than what we're making it out to be, but like, it's all there. They could do it.
For sure. All right. With that, guys, it's very late for Jake and Hargeet here. But I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight, and especially my guest. Thank you, Jake, for coming out tonight. I appreciate all your knowledge, and whenever you can come back, please do. It was a really good time.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure we'll have a lot more to talk about when the PS5 Pro does launch and we actually do see what it performs like, and
for sure,
we get to see what it actually does. Maybe we'll have RDNA 4 announced by then, so we'll be able to compare better with PC hardware. Switch 2, obviously, we'll probably have a lot to talk about when that's fully shown off.
For sure. All right. Well, tell everybody where they can find you.
So you can find me on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it at FSAPO Jake. I'm going to warn you, I'm a lot more unhinged on Twitter than I am on here, so just kind of keep that in mind. I also have a YouTube channel that's FSAPO, but again, I don't really upload there anymore. You
need to get back to it, man. You need to get back to it. You can do it.
Yeah, I probably should. I got decent viewership. Like, even when I first started that channel, I was still getting decent viewership. So I could go back into that, but just go check that out if you want to. Maybe watch my old YouTube videos and see how well those predictions landed.
Go tell him to make more videos over there. Tell him to make videos over there under his comment section. All his videos. Tell him, hey, make more of these. Thank you for coming tonight, Hargeet. Thank you as always, my friend. Let everybody know where they can find you, your book, your channel, everything.
Yeah, well, I'm not on social media, but Discord, HJohnny, and if you want to subscribe to my channel, it's HargeetJohnny1 on YouTube. If you want to buy my book, Mass Effect E-like story that I was making a game, but I made into a book, shop.shiny.us. It'll point you to Barnes & Noble and Amazon and all that, so you can go get that. If you want to get the merch, I'm wearing the shirt, you can pick that up too. And then I'll be on, I think the next one is Night Shift with C-Money and Doodle on Point for Gamers at 8 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time on Friday.
I have to get this book myself.
Go for it. If you want a signed copy, I have bundles.
He has bundles.
I'll have to look into that.
Yeah.
I want to thank everybody for showing up tonight. Everybody in the chat, of course. Everybody listening.
Hey, there's a lot in the chat.
There's a lot of people that just listen to the show. By the way, I found that out.
Awesome.
And for those people, I invite you to come down to YouTube sometime and check it out every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time or 10 p.m. East Coast time. Anyways, until next time, guys, game on.